Today we're going to remove the fascia and mountaintop at the Eastern Helix. That's coming right up. Hi, I'm Roy Smith. In last Saturday's episode I introduced you to some big changes that I want to make on the track plan of my layout and why I want to make those changes. And here are those changes as depicted in red on my track plan. I will put the link to last Saturday's episode down below so that you can go back to it for a detailed explanation of the changes. In that same episode, I mentioned two things that I needed to do before beginning to make the changes in the track plan. I said that I need to remove, or at least open up, the fascia on the Eastern Helix. And I said that I need to make White Mountain atop the Eastern Helix removable. Doing these two things would provide me much easier access to the track in the Helix. Well, I've done both of these things this week, and I want to show you the results. First, the fascia. This is what the fascia looked like on the Eastern Helix before I began to remove it. Again, you can see that it blocked my access to the track in the Helix, except for a small door at one end, or by going underneath the benchwork. Because of that fascia, it has always been difficult to fix derailments when they occurred in the Helix. As you are about to see, I removed it this week. As you can see here, I removed the first panel. Now I'm removing the second panel. I begin by removing the screws holding the panel to the benchwork. I have already drawn lines on it where I plan to cut out a window before reinstalling it later on, as I will explain in a moment. I separate the scenery from the fascia using a utility knife and putty knife. I cut through the spackling paste that I used to fill the cracks between the panels. Then, using an old screwdriver and a little force, I pull the panel off the benchwork. Lastly, I do some cleanup. A lot of spider webs, dust, and construction debris can collect inside of a hidden helix. As you can see, I have successfully removed the fascia from the front of the helix. Removing it turned out to be a lot easier than I thought it would be. There was almost no damage to the existing scenery. The supporting framework looks a little rustic but is completely intact. Later on I will cut out windows in the masonite which served as fascia, and I will reinstall the masonite window frames covering up that rustic supporting framework underneath. When I finished, it will look like this, where I removed the little door that previously was in this part of the fascia. I'm very happy now. I can see the trains in the helix, and most of the track in the helix is now accessible. The only exception is the track in back of the helix, where the helix is adjacent to the wall. If a problem occurs there, I will still have to stoop under the benchwork to access it. This is a close-up of what the helix looks like now without the fascia. I'm testing it by running an eastbound cover hopper train down the helix. Next up, I'm going to try to cut through the styrofoam of White Mountain so that I can make it removable from the layout whenever I might need to remove it for better access to the Helix. I planned to make White Mountain removable when I created it way back in 2015, but I didn't like the crack that shows where removable scenery sits atop permanent scenery. So I filled in that crack with spackling paste. That was a mistake. Now I have to open it back up, and hopefully that crack won't be too noticeable when I'm finished. When removing White Mountain, I will be able to stand upright in the Helix, as you will see. I can't stand up in the Helix right now. I can only be in there on a bended knee. But once I can stand upright in the Helix, it will be much easier to fix any catastrophes that might occur in there, as has happened on occasion in the past. I'm going to try to cut the styrofoam from inside the mountain, and I'll show you why once I get in there. Hopefully I can do this without totally destroying White Mountain. If I do destroy it in the process, I will just have to rebuild it. Alright, I'm going in there now, armed with nothing but this keyhole saw. Hopefully I will live to tell about it. I stopped long enough to put on an old shirt before going in there. I wanted to cut the top off of White Mountain from inside the Helix so that I could follow the edge of the top level of the Helix to do the cutting. I'm in there now, and I've already cut through the styrofoam. It's moments like this which make you wonder if you made the right decision about doing something. Even with the top of the mountain removed, it feels a little cramped in there. In fact, I feel like I'm in that movie released in 1990 and starring Tom Hanks called Joe versus the Volcano. I'm getting too old for this. Here's what the Helix looks like inside with the top of White Mountain removed. And here's the top in place. Later on, I will repair the damage to the terrain. Hopefully, the cut won't be visible when I finish. Eventually, I will add vegetation resembling the prototype which you see here. I constructed White Mountain back in 2015, but I never added vegetation because I knew almost from the beginning that I would eventually have to open it up as I have now done. Well, there you have it. I have done two things that had to be done before I could begin to make the big TrackPlan changes that I have been talking about. I plan to start constructing the benchwork for those TrackPlan changes in next Saturday's episode. There is a third thing that needs to be done, but the carpenter hasn't come to do it yet, and that is to change the door of the train room so that it opens outward into the hallway instead of inward into the train room. Hopefully that will be done before next Saturday, and if it is, I'll show it to you then. I hope that you will join me for the next episode as I proceed with the TrackPlan changes. And if you're here for the first time today, I hope you'll click on the subscribe button and hit the little bell icon so that you get notified of new episodes. Thank you for watching. It's always a pleasure to share the amazing hobby of model railroading with you. Until next time, happy railroading. I'm Roy Smith, and I will see you again very soon.